I was thinking of what composers are alive and not dead. And that composer is called Nico, who's a young composer. Folks, thank you.
He's a nice guy.
Yeah, exactly. He is. I have not met him, but we share a number of mutual friends. So when I was reading that quote, I thought, ooh, let's play some Nico. Thank you so much for folks who are tuning in. This is our third live salon, and it's co-hosted today, and we're going to do this every Thursday with my friend Zach Williams, which will be nice. And we're going to do a series called The Mind together. And our first guest together this week is Daniel Handler, who is a San Francisco native. Yeah, he is a poet, a musician, an author of many books, of which he's sold many books. He's prolific. And also goes by the name Lemony Snicket, but I actually met him by the name of Daniel Handler. So I met the real person initially. So thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. And we were just talking before we went live that I realized both Zach and Daniel are San Francisco natives. Did you guys go to the same high school by any chance?
I don't think so.
No? Okay.
I went to Lowell High School, but just near Lake Merced.
Oh, okay. And you, Zach? You did not go there.
I did not go to Lowell. No, I went to two high schools in Pacific Heights neighborhood and in Haight-Ashbury, to University in Irvine.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Here we are. We're both down in LA, and Daniel, you're still up in San Francisco. What's the weather like today? Let's just talk about weather throughout.
Okay, yeah. Beautiful, but cold.
Foggy?
No, it is not foggy where I am. It's been very beautiful. I've been spending my early mornings walking my dog at Ocean Beach, which has been very successful social distancing.
I was going to say, is it crowded though? Like the photos?
I think it's probably crowded later, but I go really early.
Okay.
And it's not crowded at all. And then I come back here and stay here. But the weather is conducive for staying in. It's quite cold out. So
yeah. I woke up this morning. I live in a vast warehouse that doesn't really have any major heating, much heating at all. And it was 57 degrees when I woke up this morning. So inside, it was very, very brisk. So I'm gonna throw out the first question to you, Daniel. How are you writing every day during this time? Are you disciplined on the writing front, no matter what's happening around you?
I am. It's certainly been a few weeks of severe distraction and hardship. But I am a big believer in routine. So, and my whole household is kind of. When I was young, I saw this documentary about British people in British soldiers in a prison camp someplace. And I always remembered that there's a shot of them shaving. They're like shaving and putting on their British uniforms.
Okay.
Every morning without fail, even though they were in these horrendous surroundings.
Yeah.
And that's kind of always how I felt. So I'm not until 11 and then wandering around in my sweats because I feel that 2 hours later I would hardly be able to speak English or walk upright. So I try to keep the routine going.
I went to boarding school in Scotland from the age of 8 till university. So I guess I sort of understand that that British discipline. It's quite strict.
I've received a text from a friend telling me that the Walmart EVP of corporate affairs is mentioning that the sales of tops, things above the waist, are going through the roof, but not the sales of bottoms, things below the waist.
Really?
Probably to working like this.
Is that for real?
Allegedly.
I feel obliged to state that I'm totally wearing pants right now. That wasn't something that I expected to need to say in this conversation, but I try to keep to a routine. I'm not even sleeping that late, and I've been to a few artist colonies and sometimes working in kind of buildings by myself someplace when I'm working on a book. And I find that if I start kind of severely loosening my routine that I lose focus really quickly.
Yeah. Are you disciplined, Zach, in your day to day? I know we all basically work from home.
Yeah, I have my mother staying with us right now, and we've got a 10-month-old son, my fiance and I. So we are a little bit crowded. So as we were saying just before we went live, I really wish I had some sort of booking solution so I could say, I'm in the living room for 2 hours. Please don't disturb me. But we're managing pretty well. And at this point, I would say, yeah, we have consistency in scheduling. In a large part, that's relating to my son's meal and sleep schedule. But so far, I feel productive. There's certainly no shortage of things to do. I'm not bored.
Yeah, it's just keeping the spirits uplifted. Daniel, does writing come easily for you at all times, or not so much?
Yeah, I mean, actually, writing feels pretty compulsive to me, honestly.
Okay.
So I write a lot.
The number you've written, it must be reasonably easily.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, making it good is hard, but just doing it. So I'm writing a bunch of bad pages now, and
what are you working on?
I'm working on a big theatrical show, a Lemony Snicket show that we're working on that's in its infancy, which is so that just takes a lot of solitary action and then notes from other people. So that's good. And then I'm working on a big project in a museum. So that takes a lot too. Those are kind of my primary things. And one thing that's kind of nice about that in the current circumstances is that they're both more collaborative than writing a book. And so there's people to keep in touch with.
Sure. Yeah. What's the museum project? Can you talk about it?
Yeah, I think so. The Hans Christian Andersen in Odense, Denmark, is going through a complete transformation, and I'm quite excited about it. I'm a big fan of Hans Christian Andersen, and most museums are, particularly for writers, are this kind of square, like, look, here's the pen that the writer used, here's the desk. And they're trying to create an experience that feels more like being immersed in their work. So that's kind of an interesting thing to think about. And I think particularly for all of us as we experience literature, our experience of reading a book that we really like is so different from anything that learning about the author or anything like that can do. So I think a literary museum that tries to honor the experience of literariness is cool to me.
Yeah, for sure. One thing I was thinking about last night is, what role does memory play for you in your writing, if any? I mean,
well, I take a lot of notes. I carry a notebook with me wherever I go, and I write it down because I find that the kind of poetry of things that people say is better than anything I can make up. So I think that counts as memory. I don't know, but I mean, the thing with, you start to remember something and then you start to remember something else. And before you know it, you don't know what you're kind of inventing and what you're remembering correctly. And I'm always grateful that I'm in the business of fiction where you can get a lot more leeway for that. I always think if I tried to write a nonfiction book, I would immediately be like, but you know what would be cooler is if she were twins, and before I know it, I'd publish some biography of Eleanor Roosevelt, and they'd be like, "She wasn't twins. What are you talking about?" I'd be like, "Yeah, but it's better that way." So,
but does it really matter?
I like to be on the.
Does it even? What did you say, Zach?
Does it even really matter anymore at this point? I mean, what's fact? What's fiction?
Yeah. the
fiction. Yeah. Well, I'm grateful for journalists who have much stricter boundaries about that than we fiction writers do. But I do think that, but that the fluidity of memory is a fascinating journey if you're making art, and maybe not so much if you're trying to figure out how to cure disease or other enormous non-fictional problems that are happening.
Yeah.
Daniel, I have a question too. How has your process evolved over time in terms of writing and creating?
I hope it has evolved, I guess, is the main thing. I don't feel, what I always say is that for me, when I write a book, I feel like I learn a process, and it reminds me of when you get ambitious with cooking and you find that article in the New York Times Magazine about some like fantastic dish and you make it, and then often you have to go out and buy, you have to buy like pistachio oil, or they're like, be sure and get a Nahuka strainer, and so you get a Nahuka.
You've never heard of. Yeah.
Yeah. For the rest of your life, you have those things. You're like, remember that time I made that thing, and there it is. And that's what my process feels like. I have some book, and then I work really hard on it, and then I have completely nailed down the process for writing that book, which I will never do again, and neither will anyone else. And so, I mean, I take a lot of notes, and I use a lot of index cards and legal pads. I have all kinds of analog secretarial supplies all over my desk and all over my life.
I mean, I feel like I do as well, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of a legal pad.
Oh, yeah.
It's very nice. The only thing I do is I don't really spend that much time working on a computer, which I appreciate. And I write out of the house a lot, not lately, but in general, I write out of the house a lot, and which actually began when I had a small child. And the child was so fascinating that I couldn't really get any work done if I was in the same building as the child. So I started going to cafes for the first time and working. And then when you have a laptop in a cafe, you have that weird feeling when you have to use the bathroom that you either take it with you, in which case you look pervy,
right,
or you ask a stranger to watch it for you, in which case you're a moron. And so I started writing on legal pads because no one ever steals your legal pad.
Yeah.
So I'm sure I always think I look like the Unabomber, like I'm in a cafe someplace with some index cards and legal pads, working very hard on a thing that matters a lot to me. It feels Unabomber-y.
And you feel less guilty in a cafe sitting there using their Wi-Fi, or not in your case, if you've got a legal pad rather than your laptop and everyone else has a laptop. I always feel a little guilty about that.
Well, I really like paper a lot. I do most of my writing on paper, and I do all my writing on paper. I'm a big fan of paper.
You, Zach?
You like paper?
I'm a late stage millennial. I do most of my stuff from my Apple Watch. No, I do it. I primarily write on my computer and my phone, but if I can help it, writing stuff down in a journal or a pad, I find to be a little bit more lasting in my memory.
Yeah.
There's something very ephemeral about writing digitally, and I think that actually impacts. I can only speak for myself, but I think it impacts how I retain what I create. So I would say writing on paper has a lasting effect. There's a sort of permanence associated with it.
I'm looking around my desk. As I said, I went to school in Scotland. It was compulsory for us to write everything with a fountain pen.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So I don't have so many here. I mean, I have a fair number, but I've literally got hundreds of fountain pens. It's nice. It makes the experience very enjoyable. Of course, you always end up with like ink all over yourself, but it makes sense.
Yeah, that's why I stopped. I went through a fountain pen phase when I was in my 20s. It definitely feels very elegant. Like if you say like, don't forget to buy eggs, but you write it with a fountain pen, you feel like an 18th century dandy, as opposed to someone who keeps forgetting to buy eggs. But you can't chew on a fountain pen. That's what I do on a fountain pen is I would chew on the end of it, and then I would have a horrible black vampiric kind of stain on my mouth. That's not a good look.
That's a terrible look. So you write both for kids and for adults. Does one give you more pleasure than the other? Depending on the time, perhaps, in your life. I don't know.
No, I mean, the writing gives me pleasure no matter what, and there's not very much of a difference when I'm actually writing between writing for adults and for children. I think what's very refreshing about meeting children who are reading you is that
they're reading.
They're not bound by any convention of literary culture. You know, they have no idea if some book is cool or not cool, or everyone's talking about it or no one's talking about it, or all these things that can kind of interfere in the world of writing for adults, where there's all this kind of culture and chatter about it, and young people don't care about that, for better and for worse, I guess. But it's just definitely true. I think if you are an adult and someone gives you a novel and on the back it says like, this is the most important Argentinian novel of the 50s, and you read 2 pages and you find it boring, you feel like you're the failure. Like, how can I not appreciate this? But children, if this is not interesting, it's not interesting.
Yeah.
You say, but look, it was shortlisted for this prize. That is the least interesting thing you can tell a 9-year-old. So I like the kind of actual business of being engaged in a story and actually writing. So that's fun to talk to young people.
Yeah.
But
sorry.
No, okay. I was going to say, if you hang out with adult readers, though, you can have cocktails and the conversation can shift into cheap gossip in a way that it can't with young people.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any subject matter that you haven't broached with your writing to this point that you want to go into, or a theme that you want to discuss or aspire to write about at this point?
Gosh, all sorts of them. I'm working on those 2 projects that I mentioned now, but I have a novel that I've kind of put aside for a little bit that's all about visual art and art making, and I got really interested in that. I'm really interested in all kinds of issues of identity and history, and I don't have trouble looking for subjects at all. But what I find so fulfilling about literature is that it's just such a tradition. So I think particularly at the beginning, when you're a young writer, you often think like, oh, it's all about me. It's about the thing I'm making. I can't wait for the thing I'm making to be a big deal, or like, no one understands the world the way I do. And the more you read and the more other writers you encounter, whether on the page or in person or whatever, you begin to feel more a part of a long tradition of literature that stretches back kind of to the dawn of history. And that's really fulfilling to me, just to think that I'm part of this thing that's been going on for a long time. It's kind of the transcribed consciousness of so many people. And that's a really beautiful thing to be a part of. And I would add like very comforting for me in times of strife, such as the one we're in, and not to read a book just to kind of escape from your troubles or to think about something, but to feel like, oh, I'm doing this, that we've been doing this for a very long time. There've been really terrible things happening, and people have been sitting down someplace with a little peace and quiet and reading. This is a long thing we've been doing. It's a long game.
Did you feel like that when you first started writing? I think your first book was rejected a number of times. Did that?
Yeah, I kind of did a lot of self-hypnosis during my rejection days, where I would be like, this is going to look like a very glamorous bohemian time. No one's paying attention to you. You have no money. You're like up too late doing stuff. It's going to look so cool. Right now, you're frantic and worried and broke, but it's going to look really glamorous.
A great story at some point.
Yeah. Which it does kind of, now that I'm super old. I meet writers who are like, what was it like in New York in the 90s? And I'm like, awful. But then I remember when I was in New York in the 90s, I would say like, what was it like in the 80s? That must have been so much fun. And they were like, it was awful.
So how many times were you rejected with your first book?
37 was the official number. Wow. 37 letters of rejection. Yeah.
That should just make all aspiring and all writers out there feel perhaps somewhat relieved. I guess.
Yeah. I don't know. It feels like when you've been dumped and someone's like, oh yeah, I was dumped once. And you're like, I'm talking about me. I'm brokenhearted right now. I don't want you to care about your dumping. Yeah.
Did you have you had any massive rejection, Zach, in your work life or creative life?
Oh man. Yeah.
That's kind of all there is. Right?
Yeah. What was your first job, Zach? What was your first job?
My first job was working at a tropical fish store on Geary in San Francisco.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I made it a month.
Where on Geary?
Yeah, little did I, it's closed now, so I can talk about it, but little did I know they were selling exotic animals out the back.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they were selling caimans and piranhas and all sorts of things. But that was
To whom? To whom? Who was buying these? What was the clientele?
there's a whole market for exotic animals, wild animals. If you, I don't want to go into reality TV or docuseries at this point, but the show Tiger King on Netflix right now outlines that underbelly pretty well.
Right.
That said, that was my first job, and it was interesting because you know, whenever you work on the floor, whether it's waiting tables, which I've done, doing retail, it's humbling. You deal with rejection and a lot of grief and guff every day.
Yeah.
I'm so fascinated by this fish cave that as soon as you said they were really doing something in the back, you know, I was like, oh, well, it's drugs or something, obviously. But I love that.
Same thing as well.
The only way to make money selling fish is to also sell fish in the back.
Yeah, yeah. It's a huge market. You know, it's the exotic wildlife and sea life market it's a massive thing. And people, you know,
I only think of it as villains in 80s movies, like every 80s thriller.
Yeah,
has a villain with a horrible creature, right? They have like a blue lit living room.
Yep.
They're like smoking a cigarette, you know, and they're like, oh, the piranhas. They're, you know,
yeah.
They're elegant but beautiful, like you, my dear. Something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That big, the
there's a lot of villains in the world, but that's a really big market.
Yeah, there are tons in the world. So yes, rejection abounds for me, but I see it as part of the process. It's if I didn't deal with rejection and didn't experience it, I wouldn't be the person I am today.
Right.
So
yeah. What was your first job?
My first job, I guess my first job was playing piano, playing like cocktail piano. That's what I started doing in high school. So
did you do it in San Francisco?
Yeah, I did it at like various weird social gatherings and restaurants and things like that. And I bought a tuxedo from the place, from Celix Tuxedo, where everybody was renting their prom. I bought a tuxedo and then I would go. And there was something about putting on the tuxedo that made me feel like something really glamorous was going to happen to me, which it never, ever did.
Did you get on Muni?
Yeah, I would get on the K Ingleside and I in my tuxedo. And I think in my head, I looked kind of James Bondy, but I was like 15 years old. So that was definitely not what I looked like. And I think I had some vague hope that, you know, like a glamorous woman would be like, that was excellent piano playing. Would you, you know, like come up to my attic apartment and we'll drink a martini and stare at the skyline and I'll tell you all the trouble I'm having with these jewel thieves or something. But nothing like that ever happened to me, of course. But it was that was a fun thing to do. It was actually a very nice introduction to the working life, and then I did other retail things and things like that, which are a truer introduction to the working life.
Right.
But what I always think about rejection is that we all go through life feeling rejected like a great portion of the time. And that it must mean that we are rejecting people all the time, right? That we're also giving out the energy that we're kind of receiving, that we are not paying as much attention or not giving as many people the kind of recognition and just seeing them as much as they want. That's always what I think about rejection. I think, you know, it's like when someone cuts you off on the road, someone cuts in front of you and you think like, oh, and then you think, I guess I probably do that all the time and I don't know it.
Mm.
That's what I think about rejection.
From Owen Radcliffe, who wants to know, Daniel, did you make unfortunate events? I know Owen. I think he's writing in from Texas.
True, Mr. Radcliffe, I did. I'm going to assume it's a Mr.
I think it's a Mr. It's definitely a Mr.
Yes, I did. I got interested in terrible things happening to orphans, and I thought it would be interesting to write those things down.
I have a question stemming from
I
that.
like it when terrible things happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is Count Olaf
Okay,
based
Mr.
upon a
Williams.
real character or a hodgepodge of personality, or is that straight from your mind?
I mean, I would say it's kind of a whole lot of unpleasant people that we've all encountered, right? Like really immoral, greedy people who fancy themselves very charming and erudite. That's what I would say. Everyone knows people like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody who walks into the room and but is in fact treating people terribly all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I can't be the only one who's met a billion people like that.
No.
I mean, you guys are in Los Angeles. That's 40%.
We're both fresh off the 5 to LA. So I mean, I am, and so are you, Zach. Right? We both
18 months for sure.
Yeah, I just moved from San Francisco, so I don't have too much of a grim view of LA folks yet. That may come. I don't know. What were your report cards like as a kid, Daniel?
My report cards?
Yeah. What kind of student? Were you good? Were you bad? Were you naughty?
No, I think I was kind of put an envelope a little bit with behavior. I was a good student, but I think I was bratty enough. Every so often I would get in like a little bit of trouble for being bratty. But I can't believe now, because I have a kid and we share this trait, is that I had incredibly illegible handwriting, and that was a huge source of time.
I see.
And now my son has incredibly illegible handwriting, and no one cares because, of course, everyone's typing things up.
Yeah.
Even though I'm 135,000 years old, writers and things when I was young, and for some reason, I was given this kind of like, you will be a failure if your handwriting doesn't get better, and it never got better, and it worked out okay for me. But that was, when I think of my grades, I think of like bad grades and handwriting, and that sometimes I would have to go and sit in a room, and one of my parents would be with me, and the teacher would be there, and we'd all talk about how we could fix the problem of my handwriting, which I don't think is one of those things that you can fix, actually.
Oh, bad handwriting. I think again,
I don't think I could have been.
That's where the fountain pen comes in. We used to get these punishments at school. Again, this was in sleepaway school in Scotland, that if we were naughty, I mean, this is when we were quite young, we would have to handwrite out on legal pads pages of the dictionary, so like.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I remember specifically one time
Was it the English dictionary or the Scottish dictionary?
Yeah.
The Scottish dictionary would be so fast.
I remember one, we had to write out the page of the dictionary that had pervert on it, because we'd all climbed on top of the public men's bathrooms and we were dropping things down on the guys. We were like 8 or 9. And so the house mistress made us write out in the page of the dictionary that had pervert on it, and then promptly like called our mothers, certainly called my mother. But it was supposed to be the benefit of it was supposed to also improve our handwriting as well. But really, it just made us laugh. So, yeah. Yeah.
Wow. She chose the word, or a coincidence that you were doing the word pervert?
Pardon? Oh, no. Yeah, it was very much. It was not a coincidence at all.
So our growing thing of these men in the bathrooms, you need to really know what the word pervert is before you go any further with this kind of behavior. That is fascinating. You sometimes wonder if kind of adult authority figures in schools and other places like that have never seen a dramatization about those authority figures. Right? Like when my son was in middle school, someone at his school was trying to ban a certain dance move that all the kids were doing that he thought was distasteful. So it was trying to ban. And I just remember thinking, you've seen Footloose, right? You know you're being the villain in Footloose right now. And do you know how it ends? Do you remember how that ends? Everyone dances anyway. Like you can't Like, I can't believe you work with adolescents for a living and you think that you should ban a dance move is a good thing that you can do. And it's kind of the same, like I'm going to make you write out the word pervert. Like, have you never seen a dramatization about a school in which like the person obsessed with the word pervert is in fact a pervert? You've seen that, right? It's really weird.
Very strange.
Daniel, was there a defining moment for you in terms that set you on your path? Did you feel like you were always going to be a writer, or was there a catalyst that occurred?
Well, I always wanted to be a writer, and but it was made very clear to me. I mean, not specifically by my parents so much as it was kind of society at large, that's not really like a thing you get to be. It always felt like I wanted to be Spider-Man or something, and it was like that's not a thing you can be. And so I that's what I wanted. But like that was a world money access. So it's been me that a path that I thought was kind of impossible turned out to be.
Have you ever done like daily?
I mean, I was I love doing, and that's what.
Uh-oh. Oh no, it's just the Wi-Fi. I think the connection.
Earthquake.
Oh God, no! I hope you're not having. There's not an earthquake there.
No, I know. It absolutely could not happen. Remember, there was a tsunami warning in Hawaii just a few days ago, and it didn't happen.
Really?
But I just thought everybody was like, "Nope, sorry, tsunami. We're doing virus right now. We can't do tsunami and virus. We can only do one thing."
What are you doing on? So you said before we went live, you said you were down at Ocean Beach. You're an open water swimmer, right? Did I read that?
Yeah.
Are you still doing that?
Yeah, I do it all the time. You can't. The open water swimming buildings have been closed down along with the city. And so, and the big thing there is that there's a sauna in there. It's very hard to swim in the open water up north here and not get in a sauna afterwards. People do it, but it's really hard. So I have to be content with walking by the ocean, which is, I think what has happened, one thing that has happened with all this that's going on now is that so many dogs are delighted, and my dog can't believe his luck that we go to the beach like every day. It used to be like maybe every 2 weeks. And now it's like every morning we go to the beach. He can't believe it. And many other dog owners I know say that, like, yeah, you're like home all day. You make a big lunch. Maybe you toss a piece of chicken to your dog and you take him to the beach all the time. It's like dogs can't believe. They think whatever's happening in the world, it must be positive, right? Everything wonderful is happening.
Yeah. I feel like since I've been sticking in one place down in here in LA, nature has literally moved in, which is weird if you knew where I lived, because I live amongst distribution centers and factories.
Right.
But yeah, we caught a possum here this morning. That was, like,
we're having a rat problem in my backyard, and that was another thing where I thought, like, we already have a plague. We don't need any more plagues right now. We're all done up with plagues.
People have been saying that in New York, that the rats have really like moved in at nighttime. Do you have any nature notes, Zach?
Yeah, I mean, in our neighborhood, you can hear the birds. It's more pronounced, but I'm smack in the middle of LA. Actually, I have the opposite of nature notes because I'm right next to Cedars Sinai. I hear sirens day and night.
Oh God. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. But in general, where we are, and proximal to Beverly Hills and in the Beverly Grove neighborhood where we live, it's pretty empty and quiet. So yeah, it's nice to walk around and experience the calm and serenity of things in between police siren and ambulances and things like that.
Right.
I guess do you have any more questions, Zach? Anything else you want to bring up?
Yeah, I do. Specifically, what do you think the future holds for humanity in your perspective?
Well, nice small question. Excuse me.
I wanted to ask. I think it's.
I get that question every day.
Yeah,
no,
sure.
Our co-host couldn't even hand. She's just left. That question upset her so much she's left.
It's so big. I figured I could come back at dinner time.
Okay. Just knowing that you also are wearing pants makes me feel better. I mean, quite honestly, I think that it's hard to talk about the deep optimism I actually have for humanity without sounding insulting to the pain and suffering that's going on at any given moment. I think that this is a time when the fear and suffering that so much of this planet endures all the time is actually hitting closer to home for we kind of lucky people in the first world and in the upper echelons of the first world. And I think that that's shocking to us. And so it feels bad. But when you look around the world and you see what people do and the circumstances that they do it, I think that it gives me tremendous hope for going on. And I just feel that all the time. And people are often surprised because I write about terrible things happening that I'm kind of in general an optimist. But I think that I come from a family that fled a country that was undergoing horrendous acts of violence and was really ensconced in fascism and fear. And there's so much trouble in the world, and we do pretty well. We do pretty well in it. So
love hearing that. I love hearing the optimistic viewpoint. That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Here, I've got a question for you. I'm just going to show that. How do you prioritize artistic projects and creative impulses, whether they're different mediums, writing and music, or personal projects and consulting projects like the museum?
How do I prioritize them? That's a fascinating question. I mean, honestly, that's that can be something of a challenge for me because most people, I think a lot of prioritization comes easy for them because there's stuff that they have to do, right? There's stuff that's, most people, if you say, how do you prioritize your working life versus a small personal project that you're interested in? Most of them would be like, I'm at work right now. What do you think I'm doing? You think I want to do this? No, I'm at work. So sometimes because I don't have a job, it's startling to me. But I don't know. I make a lot of lists and I figure out what I'm going to do. I just keep to a routine. So today I'm doing this, and then I'm working a little bit more on my play, and then I'm having a FaceTime conversation with my niece because she and I are trying to make a social distancing board game. Oh,
you're in it for the long haul.
Yeah, she's in high school. She's got nothing to do, and I don't really have a case for having anything better to do, so I'm doing that. And then my family is watching. Obviously, we're all watching a lot of movies lately, but we've decided that we're making a zine about this actor, Robert Cummings, who's in two of my all-time favorite movies, Saboteur, which is an early Hitchcock movie, and Moon Over Miami, which is a Betty Grable musical. And he's in a gazillion movies, and he's like not talented at all. And that's kind of magical to me.
God, he gives us all hope too.
Yeah.
He gives many of us hope, right?
My wife and son and I were all watching various movies starring Robert Cummings and taking notes on them, and we're going to make some kind of zine or something in praise of this actor who's like very appealing but not good, which is magical. But as you can see, that's a lot of projects and just a lot of things, and I like making a schedule and I like keeping to it, and that makes me feel less crazy in a world that often feels more crazy.
Right.
Thanks for asking, Margot. She said Margot PD, which in my head means she's from the police department, but maybe she isn't.
I don't think she is from the police department. No, I don't think she is.
We'll never know what the PD is for.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us.
Well, thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah,
thanks for having conversations in a world gone mad. Everyone appreciates it.
Thank you, thank you. And for folks who are watching, tomorrow, I'm going to be chatting with two economists. They're married. We are going to be discussing this light book, Deaths of Despair and the Future of Capitalism.
That's also a Betty Grable movie. That's so funny.
Yeah, so I'm going to be talking to Ann Case and Angus Deaton. They're both at Princeton, and Angus won the Economics Nobel in 2015. So their book is coming out, I think it's coming out next week. So I'm looking forward to that. And then Liam, who is a musician from the Hothouse Flowers, which is a bit of a blast from right? You need to tune in. So
we love Hothouse Flowers in my household.
Oh, good. So Liam is we're going to see how this works. I'm sure it'll work finally. But yeah, Liam is going to perform. So I guess our time, that'll probably be about like 1:30, 1:45. And he's going to perform live from Ireland, which I thought would be great fun for a way to finish off on our Fridays. And he'll take requests as well. So
requests, okay.
Requests.
I got to get on the list. I got to get busy now.
On the list. Put that on the list. You can join back in. So that's tomorrow. That's going to be the first time that we're going to have some music. So yeah, that is it. Thank you all so much for joining. What is coming up next week? Oh, well, next week on Tuesday, which is when we're going to do the first one, another Bay Area person, actually, Dean Karnassus. Dean is a extreme runner. I mean, he really is quite extreme. And I've spoken to him before when I was living in San Francisco. Dean ran 50 marathons in 50 days in 50 states. We'd talk about discipline, right?
Wow.
So apparently,
there would be one word for that. Yes.
So apparently, running's really seen an uptick recently over the last couple of weeks.
If he wasn't transcribing the dictionary at the same time, I'm not impressed.
Yeah. Will you ask him? Well, or I can call in and ask. Yeah. I want to know what the worst state to run in is.
Dude, he was there so quickly, he doesn't even know. He was like in and out like that. He's also fast.
For some reason, I want to say the answer is Delaware. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Something.
Yeah, it might be. Anyway, well, we'll find out. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in, and please share this. Thanks, Daniel.
Goodbye.
Bye.